Tonight I want to read to you the story of the Last Supper and of the washing of the feet. And this comes from the Gospel of John. So let's hear now the word of God. Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord. You are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you should also do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Well, we're just going to think about our feet for a few minutes before coming up here to experience foot washing. And this is going to be fairly informal. I've asked a few people to share a few stories. I think the story we just heard is a powerful one. It's a powerful one about what it is to love, and that is that it is often to serve. And washing people's feet is about as earthy as it gets. Mike was just saying in his little Lutheran church he grew up in, they wouldn't have done this. But I would like for you to think about your feet and think about all they do for you. And think about how many places they take you. Recently I heard an Irish poet who was talking about trust. His name is Padraig O'Tama. And he was talking about trust, and he says, in Irish, when you talk about trust, there's a beautiful phrase from West Kerry where you say, and there's an Irish phrase I won't even try to say, but the translation is, "You are the place where I stand on the day when my feet are sore." So think about someone that you trust or that you love, and think about them being the place you go, the place you stand when your feet are sore. There's something really comforting about having your feet washed or having your feet rubbed, having a foot massage, having your feet cared for. You may have experienced this with family members. In talking with Mike, I found out that he does foot massages, shiatsu massages, and I asked him if he'd say a bit about how he started doing that and what he experiences in that. Would you be willing to come up and share a little?
Okay.
He's also going
Okay, my first foray into doing foot rub happened kind of by accident, and mostly by not being able to go outside and smoke. My spouse had just delivered our first baby and was in the hospital room, and I was standing in the hospital room fidgeting mightily, and next to me on the table was a little thing of lotion they always put there, so I thought, I've got to do something. So I grabbed the lotion, started rubbing her feet. The nurse came by and went, oh, I took that as a clue, and started doing that, not just out of an alternative to smoking, but because it had a comforting effect, a healing effect for both of us. And kept doing that, continued to learn about it, and about the healing aspects of it. And in John, learning about the humility and the giving part of that, it follows right along. One of the best bits of theology I ever heard actually came from an episode of MASH, most of you have heard. And it was Father Mulcahy giving an answer to his prayer that said, I've given you one another, that when you're in need, I can be there in person. So, this is a gift for me to be there in person.
And it's why you don't play the guitar, too, right?
Yes, it is. And I couldn't do the other very well anyway, so.
He said at one point he had to choose between playing the guitar and getting calluses or rubbing feet, and he let his daughters vote on that, and they went for the foot rub. Josh, you have a story about washing someone's feet.
I do.
Do you want to tell that?
I can, yes. So yeah, my little cousin is from a different denomination than I am. He is Baptist. And when he got to the point in his faith where he wanted to take responsibility for it, in his church, they did baptism at that point. And I was incredibly honored that my little cousin Jonah asked me to do the baptism for him. It was really cool to be asked, but because of my own faith tradition, I can't be the one to do the baptism. In the Lutheran Church, a pastor has to be the one to do the baptism. And so I was thinking, gosh, I'm going to let him down. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how this is going to work. And so I talked to some of my professors at the time, and they suggested that I do a foot washing for him. Something after the service to acknowledge that I was appreciating his faith and that I thought his love for God was so cool. And so I did it, and it was just a really powerful moment for me and my family. The Holy Spirit was present there as I prayed for him and washed his feet, and it was so funny. He did full immersion for his baptism, so he had his whole body get washed, but then when I went to wash his feet, he was like, this is weird. He had just gotten his whole body washed. But I think that's kind of part of it. Like one of my professors, when he was talking about this story, talked about how back in the time, people would walk everywhere, right? There weren't cars, they weren't driving. They wouldn't bathe every day, and they only had sandals, so their feet were like super gross. And he equated it to if I just unannounced came over to your house and washed your toilet. That's how it was looked at in the time. So when we see the disciples here go, Jesus, what are you doing? It's a real act of love to go down, and a real act of service and acceptance and all of that we see in this text. And that's what I was trying to give to my little cousin Jonah. It was a really cool moment for both of us.
Yeah, and in the story, and I think Mike and I talked about this too, their feet were not in good shape, when they'd been out on the roads. And they weren't roads, they were animals. There were a lot of animals in the streets. There were a lot of things they walked through and stepped through. And then if it's muddy or rainy or anything else, there was a real need for washing your feet. So I think the biggest shock in this, though, was the fact that here they were sitting at the meal and all of a sudden Jesus got down and took that position, because usually it would be the lowest of the servants who would be washing the guests' feet as they came in. So for Jesus to do that and say, this is how you love one another, is a good reminder to all of us that it's not by doing something big and fancy, but it's by being servants and sharing those acts of love and kindness where they are most needed.